Thank you. Something so obvious, but it wasn't for me.
Okay. Uh-oh, everybody's going in and out. Are you coming back, Eric? Okay. We'll wait.
But just in case.
Okay.
Like 3 systems going now.
Okay. Do we want them
Sherry.
back in here?
Nice bow tie. I've forgotten how to tie those.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. We'll call the Village of Campton Hills meeting to order. It's February 18th, 2025. It's actually 7:06 PM. Let's see, roll call. Who's going to do roll call?
I can do that
Okay.
for you. Trustee Muncy,
Here.
Trustee Bontner,
Here.
Trustee McKelvey,
Here.
Trustee Williams.
Here.
Trustee Burson.
Here.
And Trustee Millette had notified us that
He'll be late.
He'll be late.
South Elgin is meeting as well.
quorum is present.
Okay, and President Wonecki, present. Okay, thank you. Okay, rise for the pledge. Ed Muncy, will you lead us in the pledge? Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Chief James, you want to be on first, or we have 2 speakers in the audience?
Yeah, if I could go first, just so
Okay.
I can get the officers out of here that are here. So
Okay.
this year, we implemented an Officer of the Month and Officer of the Year program. So for the January Officer of the Month, it went to Stavrula Sina. That's why I say Stavi all the time, because that is a little hard for me to say.
That was pretty good, though.
So, but Stavi is awesome. So she was the department's first child seat certified installer, so she handles that for the village. I get a lot of good compliments from parents in town. She has amazing personality. She was able to get us a bunch of car seats that are brand new, so we can hand out if residents need them for any reason. She took over the crime prevention efforts from me, because I did it, so it was grateful that she took it over. She's really good. When you look at the village website and that, or community counts, and you see these different crime prevention notices or warnings, that's coming from her. That's her hard work on it. Her personality is amazing. I get compliments all the time. So yes, every once in a while, she might be a little hard for me to understand, but she is amazing. So she does a lot of great things, and I can keep going with all the stuff she does. But she was recognized as the January Officer of the Month, so we got her a plaque, and I would just like to recognize her for that and her hard work. So she's a valued member of the department.
Oh, that's awesome. Come on up, Stavi.
So it says, in recognition of outstanding excellence, Officer Stavi, with great honor and dedication for your unwavering commitment to the Campton Hills Police Department, and obviously that includes the community, your Police Officer of the Month, January 2025. You're welcome.
We won't ask you to make a speech, Stavi. I said, we won't have you make a speech. She wants to. All right. All right, moving on. We have public comment, and we'll start out with Mike Way from KDOT, Kane County Department of Transportation, regarding tornado sirens.
Good evening. If anyone doesn't know, I'm Michael Way. I'm the maintenance superintendent for KDOT. I'm also a resident. I live in Holly Court on Hedgerow Farms neighborhood. In the past few years, we've had an outbreak of tornadoes that I've responded to, and I know multiple agencies responded to. We have an issue where you can't really hear the tornado sirens when you get in my neck of the woods or anywhere like that. And I know in the past it's been brought up to have tornado sirens installed at KDOT, and that was shot down by old leadership. There's new leadership in, and the idea is we're willing to kind of look at it and see if they will fill this gap that we have. I know a lot of people will say, with the use of cell phones and all that, why do you need tornado sirens still? But I can say the tornadoes that we had in last year, the only reason I knew that they were in the area was because I was monitoring Kane County OEM's radio. So I have that capability, not everyone does. And Kane County OEM was actually tracking the tornado a full 2 minutes before the warning went out and before the sirens that were actually activated. So those 2 minutes can make a huge difference if we can get a siren installed. So I'm willing to offer my service, whoever on this board would like to work with me. I have already kind of looked at topographical maps for KDOT, and we do sit at the highest region in this area. So I think we'd get the most benefit, and we'd be able to reach that 5-mile mark that a standard tornado siren kind of can go up to. So I'll stick around after the meeting. I have my business cards if anyone would like it, but just like the board to consider it, look into it and see what we can get done. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay, second we have Jerry Johnson, and it's regarding Echo Valley Farm going into, it's a historic nomination.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Jerry Johnson. I've been involved, grew up here in the community and all that. In 1922, my grandparents bought Echo Valley Farm, which was essentially a hobby farm at that time. My grandfather was a mechanic in Elburn and had no real interest in farming. My grandmother loved farming, and that's all I ever heard about was the good old days, farming, and Mother Nature all in the same breath. That's probably why I've been involved with Garfield Farm Museum on a daily basis since 1981 and helping to save and preserve it, because that's the three themes of the museum. In 1986, I was privileged to be asked by the Kane County Board to serve on the Enabling Study Commission to look at the potential of establishing a historic preservation commission for the unincorporated parts of Kane County. We did that, made the recommendation. The county passed that. It was one of the first in the state to approve such commissions. And as a result, that's been in existence then since the late 80s. And here in Campton, we have a number of sites that people have voluntarily put forward to be on the historic register of the county, which gives it some protection so that if a building, particularly in the building department, if a permit application comes in wanting to alter the property, it's a bit of a red flag to the zoning officer, building code officer, to look and see, is this in the proper thing to be done from a historic standpoint since it has been registered. So with that, I'm just coming to ask for a favorable letter of going to the county, which is going to consider it at a public hearing, I believe February 26th and all. And that's in essence what I'm here about. If anybody has any questions. The site itself is a very simple upright and wing farmhouse with a small collection of barns on it and sheds. The house at the earliest dates no earlier than the late 1870s. We do know there was remodeling done to it in 1914 from one record that I've been able to acquire. And the fact that it represents the farmer's daughter now going from dairy farming to a hobby farm situation. They kept a couple of cows. They had sheep when I was young and chickens. But at the one end of the barn, where there was stalls for my great-grandfather, who moved in with them, his 2 draft horses, but at the other end of the barn was a 2-car garage. So it represents this transition from a horse and buggy, if you will, to the internal combustion engine and all. So it doesn't have any direct historic significance except for the fact that it's a relatively intact surviving example. My goal, we've already started restoration with it, and my goal is to basically take it back to its 1940s appearance, since a dormer was added to it in 1934, and get rid of that. I never cared for the red incel brick, they called it, which is basically a red brick tar paper, that maybe provided some insulation, and you didn't have to paint it. But I never cared for it all those years, so I'm glad to see it finally gone now that I and my wife own the property. Ultimately, the property also has a conservation easement on it that the township, Campton Open Space, holds, so it'll stay as open space. And there's a very defined footprint of where the buildings can be, and if something happens to them, they can only be replaced of a certain height or size, so it keeps the size appropriate to the size of the 11 acres. And
Okay. Any questions or comments for Jerry? Nothing? All right, thank you, Jerry. Mhm. Okay. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Any items to be removed?
President Winnicke? Yes.
Ed, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to remove items 4D as in dog, E as in echo, and G as in gamma. I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, I'll accept a motion to pass the consent agenda with the exception of D, 4D, 4E, and 4G.
So moved, Muncy.
Moved by Muncy, second by Williams. Roll call.
Trustee Muncy,
Aye.
trustee Boltner,
Aye.
trustee McKelvey, Aye. trustee Williams,
Aye.
and trustee Burson.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, item 4D.
Sure, thank you, President Winnicke. 4D has a typo, 4E has a typo as well.
Can you make a motion to,
I'm going to do each separately, yeah.
Yeah.
So, a motion to amend 4D to read, motion to approve and consent to the village president's reappointment of H.R. Green to serve as village engineer for a term of February 18th, 2025 to April 30th, 2026.
Okay, that's a motion?
That's the
Could I have a
motion.
second on that motion? Moved by Williams. Okay, we need roll call, or just take them all? We'll take them all.
we can do them all together.
Okay.
Well, it's probably better to do each one, because they may get a different vote.
Okay, all right.
But that was a typo by the clerk. It
Turn your
wasn't-
mic up,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. That was a typo on the agenda, that it did need to be rectified in this way.
Okay,
So roll call, trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Boltner?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Williams?
Aye.
And trustee Burson?
Aye.
okay, motion passes. We'll go to 4E.
Sure. Motion to amend motion 4E to read, motion to approve Resolution 25-08, accepting the proposal from H.R. Green for village engineering services for a term to expire April 30th, 2026.
Okay, do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by trustee Burson.
Roll call,
Any-
trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Boltner?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Williams?
Aye.
And trustee Burson?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And to 4G.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, President Winnicke. 4G, I'd like to amend that motion, and then hopefully someone will second, and we can discuss why. I would like to amend it to read as follows. Motion to approve and consent to the village president's appointment of any trustee to the Technology Committee as trustee liaison.
Okay, do I have a second for that? Anybody? Second by trustee McKelvey. Comments or discussion?
Okay, the reason
Go ahead.
to be recognized, sorry. The reason that I changed it to any trustee from a singular trustee is because at this point with the Technology Committee, we're getting such great updates from the chairperson and Kim Muir. We already get the information similar to, and I wish trustee Millette was here, Trustee Millet was the liaison for Public Works for a period of time, and then under the last administration, he no longer, due to scheduling commitments, that sort of thing, was able to. And we've run it without a liaison for that entire time, and it's gone pretty well. I am currently the liaison on the Planning and Zoning Commission, but as soon as they're done with the comprehensive plan work, I'm going to ask to be removed as a liaison, because I don't think that commission needs a liaison either, and I especially don't think a trustee should be on that commission, because then they get to judge and rule on things that occur in that commission. So at this point, I think it would be best, I don't think it's necessary to have a liaison on the Technology Committee. So that's essentially what this reads. To vote yes for this would mean that you think a trustee should be a liaison. To vote no for this motion, as I have amended it, would be that you're saying we don't need to have any trustee as the liaison, sorry.
Okay, Trustee McKelvey?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I just want to agree with Trustee Muncy. I think, Madam President, you and I had this discussion, I know when you asked me if I wanted to be on it, and I kind of pushed back and said, why do we even have one? And even if you look around at all the other committees. So I concur that we should vote no on this motion as the way it is, or the amendment to the motion as the way it is expressed by Trustee Muncy. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Trustee Burson?
If what's on the table is to vote no and not have a liaison, or to vote yes and allow any trustee to be the liaison, I'll have to vote yes. I have the utmost respect for Chair Muir and the work that she's done. I couldn't, I don't have any qualms, I don't have any concerns, there's anything I would like to see different, or anything. It's perfect. That's not the issue. The issue is that Chair Muir is not going to be the chair in a couple of months, because she's going to be a trustee and she's not going to be able to be on that committee anymore. And we are very fortunate to have very skilled, talented, dedicated people working on the committee, but we have also, just because of the nature of the work, we are implicitly granting a significant amount of power to these people. And we don't have any reason to think that anyone would do anything inappropriate, that they would even dream of it. But for us to have a technology committee which may have certain access to systems, may have certain access to people that others don't have, and that is potentially even meeting in closed session about security issues and so forth that confront the issue, and have there be no conduit back to the board, doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. Trustee Muncy, go ahead, or Trustee Williams first? No? Go ahead.
Thank you, President Winnicke. Just a question for President and the Administrator. Two questions, actually. The Technology Committee does not currently have any a budget or capability to spend money, correct?
That's correct.
The technology,
They
second
make
question.
recommendations.
Yes, they make recommendations. The second question is, the Technology Committee does have a conduit through the Administrator, correct?
They do, and they also kind of have communication with Helping Hands, who is our paid technology expertise.
Who the Administrator oversees?
Yes,
Thank
through
you.
the contract.
Okay, Trustee Burson?
My understanding from the training that we received a couple of years ago is that committees are creatures of the board. And I believe that our code provides for liaisons to be appointed to committees for purposes of the board being able to remain engaged with that committee and vice versa. So while I appreciate that there is a conduit to the Administrator, I'm not sure that that's what was contemplated when liaisons were established in our code in the first place. So if there was a committee where we were considering saying, I don't know whether liaison's even important, I'm not sure that this is the one I would start with. So I would certainly, in the alternative, as it was expressed, I would be a yes on this.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
And I was going to say, to that point, we could readdress this in May or June when there's a change
That's true.
of the chair being a trustee.
Go ahead, Nick.
I just wanted to clarify and make sure I understand. So if we change this to the amendment that you suggested, trustee Muncy, are we saying that there is no need for a liaison period in the technology committee? And I guess I still don't quite understand why we would just cut it out if we had a willing and able volunteer from the board to come to those meetings and be the liaison. I'm not sure what we're gaining from taking it away. I mean, if we surveyed and had nobody available, then I might agree. But could you just clarify kind of more the reason for taking it away? If I can engage trustee Moore.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, President Winkie. I don't think there's a reason for taking it away. What I'm trying to say to this motion, what I stated earlier was, we have a committee that's got an exponentially larger budget in Public Works that has been running just fine with no liaison. We will soon have, if you agree with my recommendation to remove me from the Planning and Zoning Committee, their commission, there'll be no liaison there. We have no liaison on anything else. It's not like we have them on everything else. So I don't see the need for it. So that was why it was my suggestion to say, and this is not a permanent thing, saying that there's never a liaison. It's just saying right now, we're not appointing one. And that could be changed after an election or after a change in whatever, that could be changed. But right now, I'm saying, looking at the landscape we have right here before us, I would say, no, let's just not appoint anybody right now and see how it goes. That's it. That's what I've got.
Okay, trustee Williams.
This might be a little side take on it, but, before I was, once again, as a citizen and now on a board, I am really impressed by the people that volunteer for all the boards here. I really am. I am like wowed that this many people care about our community to come here for free to do the work they do. And as being a board member on the main board, I feel like to give them the wherewithal to make decisions and suggest things to the main board without the oversight of the board is cool. I really do. I think sometimes we get better ideas because we do it that way. I think, sometimes some things have come from the boards that are not this board, and they're like great ideas, and I love it. So I think it allows them to have, I think, a level of, they don't have to run, they don't have to be a politician, they don't have to go and do all that stuff, but they get to be on a board, and I think I like to keep that way. I think it's kind of cool. It gives them a little bit more like oomph, like they can do something for the village that is not influenced by the board completely. They do make suggestions, we make votes on it, but it's just a cool way of doing it, and I really would like to make it that way more if that's possible. So that'd be my only comment.
Okay. How about one more comment?
One
Go
more
ahead, Nick.
small comment, quick one.
Go ahead.
I definitely understand now what you're saying, trustee Muncy. The technology board does seem to be very proficient, great reports, amazing, very impressed. I would just want to make sure that they know if they feel like, or any other committee, that they do need that liaison, that they can come to, the administrator and request that, and it would come right back to the board and we'd get one, yeah. But, the technology committee is very impressive, so, thank you.
Yeah, because you're not changing your underlying ordinance that allows for liaisons that trustee Burson correctly cited. You're just at this time on that board not appointing one.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, roll call.
Roll call, trustee Muncy,
No.
trustee Boatner,
No.
trustee McKelvey,
No.
trustee Williams,
No.
and trustee Burson.
Yes.
Okay, the noes have it.
Okay.
All right. Good discussion. All right, moving on to staff reports. Chief James Levan, Police Department, January 2025.
Thank you. You have the January monthly report. Activity calls for service, 336, 21 accidents, 23 citations, 4 arrests, 1 for a felony, This Sunday, we have, usually twice a year we do, it's a mandatory department meeting and training, so we have that this Sunday. Christina's been busy on a couple grants she has been working on, and I know grants we discussed. And so we were awarded the ILEAS grant for new TASER 10s. So it is a zero cost to the village. The grant amount was $9,411.60,
That's awesome.
which they'll be issuing a check, which goes to Axon. So tasers are extremely important in our line of work. It is one option or tool that an officer has besides using deadly force. And it's a good tool for us to have. And happy we got this, because to break it down a little bit for you guys is that 404 agencies applied for it. The total grant was $32 million. 404 agencies applied, 223 were awarded the tasers. How they decided it, the criteria for it was the revenues that an agency has or a village, so that is coming into the police department to fund it, the geographic location that the department serves. They were trying to award the grants to agencies that were in more rural areas with larger areas to cover with fewer officers, because they realize it's an important tool. If you go to the city of Chicago and you have 150 officers, your backup is fairly close. Out here, our backup is not always that close. So we sort of met all the criteria very well. We were awarded it. Nice thing about it is that we were previously using TASER 7s. It was under a 5-year agreement with Axon that expired this year. So the 5-year mark is pretty much where the equipment sort of goes obsolete. You don't get your warranties on it. So we get all of this at no cost. The only cost going forward would be $960 a year, which is pretty much like your data storage type of deal with the tasers, but that is it. So we got the 3 tasers, over 200 cartridges, the training suit, the certification for an officer. So it was an excellent grant to get, and again, it's zero cost to the village, so that was a huge benefit. And yes, this was, many of these have done months in advance before we even started discussing grant policies and that. We currently have a grant submitted to ILETSB for $650,000, and that is yearly their recruitment and retention grant. That will typically go to agencies that are smaller agencies and have limited funding resources. They give these out to a lot of agencies each year, so we're going to remain hopeful that we get it, because we meet all the different levels and the different criteria very well. A perfect example would be the FBI suggested officer rate is 2.3 officers for every 1,000 residents. Here in the village of Campton Hills, we are 0.71. So we fall well beyond it. So we're hoping with where we line up that we would get a good chance to get this. This is a 2-year grant. So when we did it, and to Treasurer McPhillips, he had to do a lot of work on this because a lot of paperwork had to go into ILETSB. So this would be a 2-year grant, and how it pretty much would break down is that that is going to cover the costs, salaries, benefits, training of 2 officers for 2 years with a partial 3rd-year extension. Since if we would get this, we can continue applying for this, in 2 years, like there is no limit on it. So just because we get it once doesn't mean we won't get it again. But again, it could be either used for current officers for retention or for recruitment. And then one more for you guys that we're working on. Actually, Scott forwarded this to me, and we did a little digging on it. So it's a Kane County Riverboat grant. And they are very specific to what they award the money to agencies for. What I did when I researched it, I found out, especially Kane County, they get a substantial amount of money every year for IT upgrades, security, software, anything computer related, including website hosting. Like in the past previous years, they've received, $260,000 one year, $190,000 another year. We aren't looking for that much money, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity, so I've worked with Kim. She's going to get some information for me. We are in the process of upgrading our security here with our whole system. So for us, even if we say, let's just say it's 30, 40,000, whatever the number may be, for us to submit that to them, I think gives us pretty good odds to be able to get reimbursed on it. So that has to be finalized by, I think, March 5th or beginning of March. Just waiting for some numbers from Kim. We have all the paperwork done, and we'll see how that goes. So hopefully that will be positive too. But that is your grant update, unless there's any questions.
All right, any questions or comments for Chief? All right. We'll move on. Finance Department, Timothy McPhillips, our treasurer, is not here tonight, but you had a finance information in your packets.
And on that note, I'd like some feedback of that document, because we got a good favorable variance on most of it, but on scope of personnel costs, primarily in the police department, we're a little over budget, and we're over budget on legal fees, essentially. And I know there's some discussion, if that doesn't kind of rectify, we'll be out of budget balance come April 30th. So I think you've all read the document and saw the same numbers, so I just wanted to get some feedback from you on that aspect.
Okay, we'll start with Jim. and then
Yeah, I think I'll just try to keep it as somewhat high level, but basically, if this was a household or a business or in the private sector, you got to find the offset somewhere. You got to do something. You can't just say, well, this is what happened and this is why it happened. It's not good enough. It's like, what can every other department or somewhere else can we find some offset? Doesn't mean we're going to claw back maybe all the way, but it cannot be business as usual. And I think there's been a number of us on this board who have raised the issue, for example, on legal, and we're averaging $14,000 a month. And we can all come up with reasons why, but it's insanity. As it relates to some of the other areas, there has to be some other areas that maybe we're under, so maybe we can freeze it. But it cannot be business as usual. And the best way to do it is, I'd like to hear what you as the administrator feel you can do. And I'd like to see a plan that says, here's where we are, and here's what we're going to try to do on a go-forward basis. We only have 3 months left, so, it's a big hill. It's a big hill.
Yeah, and I think the chief can speak to the personnel costs very directly. He and I have been tracking this for a while. It's not news. So Chief, if just the reality of the situation with the staffing.
If you look at the budget on the breakdown, and I remember when we first discussed this, going back to the beginning of the budget year previously, we said one thing was bring down overtime costs, which I said I was confident we could do. Well, if you look at our overtime costs, it's substantially lower than where we should be at right now. So we tried to eliminate that. But because of a personnel matter that was inherited by me, not caused by me, this has been for a while, is we have a salary, we have backfilled shifts for 10 months. So if you look at, I'll give you an example, look at the part-time salaries on here, and you say, oh, well, you're substantially higher on the part-time salary. Absolutely, I'm higher on the part-time salary because I have been backfilling shifts for almost 10 months. So I try to take one thing away so we're not high on overtime. That's worked out pretty well considering, but part-time's over because I still have to have someone out there where we only have 2 cars a shift. So I can't eliminate another car. I can't go 1 car a shift. Like, that's just, it's impossible for me to do. So, and I completely understand it and be like, yes, we can throw excuses like at all of this. The fact is what the numbers is, but I still have to have cars out there. So it's hard. And I have to also clarify, because I have a bit, if you look from 8-month to 9-month here, I'm sort of missing something on it. So I'm going to have to clarify with Treasurer McPhillips. I'm showing $130,000 difference in regular salaries, which doesn't even remotely, that's not possible. Like, so somehow, something's not right in a 1 month span.
I think he's included salaries to be plural, part-time and full. I think there's a roll-up there, James.
Well, my part-time's still going up.
I know, but I think we've double tapped something on that, and we'll talk to him
Okay.
later in the week. Yep.
Yeah, I noticed it today when I was looking at it,
But the
so,
bottom line is, that is, for the reason stated, the reason that is got an unfavorable balance. When we have so few officers, when we have one out for any reason, any length of time, it does cause some variance because it has to be backfilled.
Okay, we'll go down Nick, and
Thank you.
then Ed, and then Janet.
So, a couple different areas to touch on, but with the legal, we can make lots of suggestions and thoughts, but what we as the board actually consume, of course, is legal time at these meetings. So directly, our consumption is twice a month. And I was thinking, I don't know that we need legal at both meetings every month, I think we could easily get by with the attorney present at a meeting once a month. Potentially less than that, I don't know. I mean, if there's not an ordinance to be drafted, you could manage the agendas where it was favorable to the days that the attorney was going to be here. Another thought is, we can only, again, say so much at these meetings about the consumption of legal time outside of things that were already approved, litigation, other types of matters that have to consume fees, but potentially outside of that, sort of the discretionary hours, perhaps there's a cap on those and they need to be approved. So perhaps, if our budget is X, we put a cap on it, whether it's an ordinance, because policies just come and go. Maybe there's an ordinance that somehow is written to encompass our budget and a certain amount of legal hours per year divided by the week. And if it goes over that and there's a reason to do that, then it needs to be approved by the board, because otherwise we really have no control. We look at these numbers over and over, we present our dismay, we're dissatisfied, we brainstorm, but there's really no plan of attack, nothing, no action plan to keep these things in line going forward. So I think we should be brainstorming on some sort of policy or ordinance that locks in so we can't go over these numbers, these surprise numbers, because they're always a surprise. Oh my gosh, we're over. No, what happened? We have no control. And with the police department, what the police department is going through right now, their payroll has to support this liability. And I really think that needs to somehow be a different line item on this budget. We're really handicapping our police department. These numbers don't reflect the actual payroll or the work that the chief and the police department have done this year. They're really skewed, and they don't present the real fact of the matter of, he's supporting payroll without a police officer on staff. That's what I have
We
right now.
can take a look at trying to give a report of what that incident and that absence has caused to payroll, call it out, and any legal costs that have accrued to that, so you have a total accounting for that out of the ordinary, extraordinary event that placed a burden on two things, but it's the same event, so you can track the cost of that event or that issue. We can certainly provide that, and then just in the budget document, maybe we can create a document that, it wouldn't be the same as an engineering agreement with a change order if we go above it, but I can look at with the auditors a way to call that out, so if it does exceed at a certain point, we do it won't be the same as a change order, which you see in every engineering contract, but we can work something out where it's the responsibility of the treasurer and the administrator to report it. And address it at 6 months, not at 9 or 12.
Okay, moving on to Ed.
And I will present at the next meeting with Treasurer McPhillips some ideas and some questions about how we should address the next year's budget,
Good idea.
so that I can get your feedback on that next year's budget before we get deep into presenting it and finalizing it with the finance committee.
Okay.
Thanks, President.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let
ahead.
James say something. Yeah.
So, and the police department is continuously trying to look for ways to offset this cost within my ability. Is like, you know, the truck enforcement thing, which truck enforcement is extremely important on many levels. A, because it destroys our roads, and there's a serious funding issue for the roads here. But, you know, I personally went out and we had a $5,000 overweight for a crane in town that didn't get a permit. So we are not doing these things as revenue makers. We're doing it as part of our roadways. This crane was in Fox Mill. You know, we have the administrative tow fee, which is relatively new to us. But if you look at it, and it actually hasn't been updated quite yet because there's been quite a few more to it, is that, you know, these fees or these ordinances, these are there to offset costs that the police department puts out in expenses. You know, if it's 2 officers on a DUI arrest and all this time and the money that goes into it. So we don't look at these things necessarily as a revenue maker, but, I mean, the fact of it is it does offset cost on it. It's just so, like, they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're just new right now, so they haven't had a chance. And again, if it wasn't for a personnel matter, I think I know it'd be a completely different story, because I've already done this math in my head to know that what the deficit is on this budget here for your salaries. If I took X amount of dollars for that and put it in here, it'd be a completely different story with that, because I've already done the math in my head. So it's just a hard thing, and hopefully that gets dealt with here.
And
can move
we'll give you a
past.
full accounting of both legal and personnel costs to that issue.
All right, we'll move on to Ed.
Thank you, President Winnicke. There's basically 3 things that I think I'd like to see, and I don't know if the other trustees would like to chime in, if we have a consensus or not. But number 1 would be more frequent treasurer reports and actual in-person reports from the treasurer. I don't think that this should have waited until now. As Administrator Rooney said, at 6 months would have been a lot more appropriate than at 9. I don't want to go through all of the, you know, what happened in the past. We're not saying anybody did anything wrong, but I would like more frequent treasurer reports. Number 2 would be to stop all non-essential spending for the rest of this budget year. So that would mean, I agree with Trustee Boatner, no attorney unless they are required. And that's not picking on the attorneys. I'm just saying that that's one area where we can tighten our belts a little bit. Other areas we can tighten our belts should be included in the number 3 suggestion, which, you know, I'm in agreement with what Administrator Rooney said, to come to us at the next meeting, please, with a plan and/or options to bring this back. And I would like to see, how do we get this back on budget for the rest of this year? How do we get within our budget so we land there? And I would like you to please involve the Finance Committee as well, not just yourself and Treasurer McPhillips. I'd like the Finance Committee involved in that as well, to find ways that we can stop all non-essential spending and end this year on budget. So those are the 3 things I'd like to see, please.
Okay. Janet next, and then we'll come back. Go ahead.
I agree with almost everything that I've heard so far on this topic. I would firstly like to underscore for Chief Levan that we all appreciate so much everything that you're trying to do to fill this hole, but it's not your hole to fill. And so as it relates to the police personnel matter, I feel that, you know, when in a situation where the matter is unusual, possibly even a little extraordinary, and when it also didn't even occur on your watch, at least in the genesis of it. So to me, this is rather like, you know, the roof caved in or something. I mean, this is not something that I feel like we want to tag our police department with in any way that would restrict your resources. If a bad thing has happened, you know, personnel-wise or any other way to the village that we didn't expect, then we as a village have to find a way to work through that issue. But for it to, from a budget standpoint, to make it seem as if it somehow hamstrings the police department doesn't make sense to me. So I'm hopeful that that's something that we can work through, so that, and the cost is what the cost is, but I don't feel like it should be on your P&L. And so if there's a way that we can, fix that, I think it would be very helpful to the department and to the village. So in regards to legal expenses, I agree with Trustee Boatner about the presence of the village attorney at each meeting. And again, without any disrespect to any of the attorneys that have sat here with us, but in particular, when we have an attorney that's not our regular attorney, there is routinely not significant input during the meeting. I also have, it appears from looking at the legal expenses related to FOIAs, that we're spending more money on legal evaluation of FOIAs than we have in the past. And it's not clear to me that that is because of an increase in FOIAs per se, but rather how the FOIAs are handled within the village. And so I would like to get a better understanding as to how we're deciding which FOIAs need to go down the legal route, which is obviously significantly more expensive, and which FOIAs are more routine and do not need to go down that legal route. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, when it comes to legal expenses, it's very easy to run up legal expenses without, you hardly even know it. You pick up the phone, you write it, you send an email, you copy somebody on an email. Lawyers bill, in my experience, in what, about 10-minute increments, would you say, Tom, right? So 10 minutes, every time you copy somebody on an email, if they're looking to get you. Now, I'm not saying our attorneys are. I don't, that they're being unfair or anything like that. But for us, trying to manage that expense, I would hope that, especially now during the remainder of this budget year, and then something to look forward, look in the coming budget year, when are we picking up the phone? When are we sending the email? When are we having that meeting with our attorney? Because those are expensive. Mm-hmm. And when we have meetings that have 2 attorneys, maybe even 3, they really get expensive. So I'm hoping we can all around reduce that expense.
Good comments. Jim?
Yeah, just a quick kind of echo of what Trustee Burson just said, because I'm glad you've kind of come around to what we've talked about in the past, because you're absolutely right. And a couple comments. Number one, on the FOIA comment that you made, I think that's a fair one. I don't think every FOIA needs to be run by a lawyer. Some do, but not all. Number two, I know I've mentioned this many times in the past, but in not too distant past, we would rarely have a lawyer at our meetings. I know when Harry Blecker was president, rarely did we have one, unless as what Trustee Muncy had mentioned, there was an ordinance or something that needed to be addressed at that meeting. Obviously, it's important to have an attorney there. So I think that's the challenge. I think we as a board, it seems like there's a consensus to challenge the administrator and the president to try to listen to us and say, we don't need them. And I want to echo something. Rarely does our lawyer ever speak at these meetings. And I walk away thinking, well, that was a nice evening, but it was a nice payday. And I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to be honest. Because I have nothing against attorneys, I have nothing against our law firm. But we have to do a much better job. And I think the time has come that we need to address it that way. Also, I think we've gone round and round about trustees should never pick up a phone and call one of our attorneys. We've had that, discussion before as a board. And now, one of the things, if we bring the attorney in early before the meeting, so if anybody, I say stop that immediately. There's no reason to bring the attorney in before a meeting and have the meter run in our situation where we're over budget. I would say that that should cease. And I would suggest that if there's any board member here that has a question for the attorney, they run it by the president or the administrator, and they can take our question to the attorney, because at least they are talking to him, hopefully not on a super ongoing basis, but at least they can bring that question up and get back to us. That would be the challenge I would lay out. Thanks.
Top, go ahead.
I like all these ideas. I think we should just do one of them, though, which is maybe, maybe quickly, before the next meeting, come up with a number that we could save by not including legal in the meetings, to get a number. We can put a number to that, right? Okay. I love numbers. And here's another idea. I know this isn't really pushing the needle, but what if we all just didn't get paid for these meetings for the rest of the year? I'll do it. Don't pay me. I'll come. I'll finish out till May. I know it doesn't amount to anything, but it's all I can throw in there. But if you want to make the meetings free for us till then, I'm in. Because I really do think, going back to Chief Levan, he's doing everything he can to work with, he's kind of came in a little, it was overwhelmed. So I think he's doing everything he can to fix it. He's going after these, he's working with everything he can to get even free money from grants and all that. I think that's wonderful. But I think if we could help legal figure out what we can save, and then maybe we can all just not get paid, how cool would that be? Because I don't even know what we get paid, to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever gotten a check. So, okay, thanks.
We'll have to check into that.
No, I didn't get them. I don't know what they are.
You don't know what they are. It's because Trish opens them. All right, are we ready to move on? Ready to move on? Okay. Move on to 6 action items. A, motion to approve Resolution 25-08, authorizing the adoption of a grant application and management policy for the Village of Campton Hills, Illinois.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Burson.
Second, Muncy.
Second by Muncy. Discussion? Comments? Okay, roll
I would just
call.
comment, the example the chief gave you in his staff report would be a good example of what we're already implemented on your suggestion on the draft from 2 weeks ago on expressing items that have to be brought for your attention to approve before we apply.
Yes, and that was started